Rachel Zegler just keeps making things worse with the Walt Disney Company. The more that she tries to defend this movie, the more that she tries to spew her agenda onto the general public, it's only making matters worse. Not just for Bob Iger, but for whatever is left of the image of Disney as a whole.
Jonah Platt, whose father helped produce the latest Snow White film, had some very harsh words for star Rachel Zegler.
For context, Variety wrote a report recently titled "Inside Disney's Snow White Fiasco: Death Threats, Beefed Up Security, and a Social Media Guru for Rachel Zegler." EV Magazine wrote on X, "When you compare how Rachel Zegler spoke about Snow White to how other actresses who played live-action Disney princesses spoke about their character, really underlines just how poorly she carried."
Subscribe now to get the full story behind Hollywood's most shocking controversy of the year. Rachel Zegler's emergency meeting with Disney lawyers wasn't just another celebrity scandal. It exposed a $270 million disaster that could permanently change how Hollywood's biggest studio approaches its most treasured classics. What started as a dream project quickly descended into the most expensive public relations nightmare in recent memory. And what happened next would change everything.
Lawsuits.
I'm in the thick of rehearsals for Romeo plus Juliet, so I'm going to get out of here. Bye for now. The Variety story notes how a couple of minutes after posting this, she replied to her own tweet and wrote, "And always remember..."
The controversy began long before the film hit theaters. During early promotional interviews, Zegler described the original 1937 Snow White as extremely dated and weird, criticizing the classic romance where Snow White was saved by the prince and she was asleep and she didn't do anything.
Variety breaks down how after this tweet went viral, the studio was shocked that she would mix a promo tweet with a political statement. As a result, Mark Platt flew to New York to speak with her in person.
She even called Prince Charming a stalker. These weren't just casual remarks. They were the first signs of a fundamental disconnect that would eventually cost Disney hundreds of millions. When you compare how Rachel Zegler talked about Snow White to how other actresses who played Disney princesses described their iconic roles, the contrast couldn't be more striking.
Or encouraged. Zegler isn't the only one who has made political statements, though. Her co-star Gal Gadot, who plays the Evil Queen, expressed her staunch support for Israel.
While Emma Watson praised Belle's intelligence and compassion, and Lily James highlighted Cinderella's courage and kindness, Zegler seemed almost embarrassed by the character that launched Disney's animation empire. This approach immediately alienated longtime fans who grew up cherishing these stories. The financial reality behind this controversy is even more shocking.
White's budget was around $240 to $270 million. It has made $43 million domestically so far and around $84 million globally per box office.
Snow White's production budget ballooned to between $240 and $270 million, one of Disney's most expensive live-action remakes ever. Yet the box office returns tell a devastating story. Just $43 million domestically and around $84 million globally.
The film received backlash for various reasons in the lead up to its release. Zegler had called the original Snow White movie dated and weird and said Prince Charming was a stalker.
Industry experts now predict the film could lose more than $100 million, potentially making it Disney's biggest live-action failure to date. But the box office wasn't the only place where Snow White faced trouble. Behind the scenes, test audiences had been raising red flags for months.
Compare how Rachel Zegler spoke about Snow White to how other actresses who played live-action Disney princesses spoke about their character, really underlines just how poorly she carried herself.
Viewers reported that the film's aggressively modernized tone undercut the whimsical essence that made the original beloved. Character arcs had been so thoroughly revamped that the central fairy tale, the one that established Disney as an animation powerhouse, was nearly unrecognizable.
The son of Snow White producer Mark Platt, Jonah Platt is the son's name, he is speaking out publicly against Rachel Zegler and blaming her for the film's catastrophic failure at the box office.
The situation took an even more dramatic turn when Zegler posted on social media about her upcoming Romeo and Juliet project, then immediately followed it with, "And always remember Free Palestine." According to Variety, Disney executives were shocked that she would mix promotional content with such a divisive political statement.
I mean, he's totally right. Now, of course, as we covered, the movie is terrible anyway in its own right. It was probably going to underperform regardless. People are tired of the soulless cash grab remake thing.
This wasn't just about personal expression. It was potentially undermining the carefully crafted marketing strategy for a film already facing significant headwinds. What makes this even more complicated is that Zegler's co-star, Gal Gadot, who plays the evil queen, has been vocal in her support for Israel.
The movie has all kinds of problems that could be pinned partly on the producer. Like the producer did not do a good job. Nobody who produced this movie did a good job.
Now the film's two leads found themselves on opposite sides of a deeply contentious global issue, creating yet another layer of controversy for a production already drowning in negative publicity. The situation reached its breaking point when Zegler was reportedly summoned to an emergency meeting with Disney's legal team. According to industry insiders, she arrived accompanied by her own lawyers, signaling that both sides were preparing for a potential battle. The central question?
Apart from all of the political controversy started by the actress, so the movie had all kinds of problems creatively and conceptually.
Had Zegler violated contractual obligations by making statements that damaged the film's prospects and Disney's brand reputation? Disney's lawyers were reportedly focused on specific clauses requiring cast members to uphold and protect the company's legacy properties. They questioned whether Zegler's pre-release comments, calling the prince creepy and labeling the original story outdated, constituted a breach of these provisions. For a company that has built its empire on generational nostalgia, such public criticism from the star of a major remake represented an unprecedented challenge. But this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Zegler's representatives countered these accusations with a shocking claim. Disney itself had instructed the cast to emphasize the film's progressive angle.
She should be able to express herself and speak her truth or whatever nonsense, regardless of the consequences to everybody else.
They argued that what once seemed like forward-thinking commentary approved by marketing executives was now being twisted into a contractual breach as the studio searched for someone to blame for the mounting financial disaster. This revelation raises disturbing questions about corporate honesty and accountability. Was Disney trying to have it both ways, pushing for modernized messaging during production, then distancing itself when that approach backfired with audiences? Leaked internal communications suggest executives were split from the beginning on how heavily to reimagine Snow White for contemporary audiences. Adding fuel to the fire, Jonah Platt, son of Snow White producer Mark Platt, publicly criticized Zegler, blaming her for the film's catastrophic box office performance. This rare public rebuke.
And one of the most basic is the responsibility to control yourself and comport yourself a certain way publicly so that you don't harm the project and thereby harm all the hundreds of other people who are working on it.
From someone connected to the production, signaled just how desperate the situation had become. The blame game wasn't just happening behind closed doors anymore. It was spilling into public view, creating a spectacle almost as dramatic as the fairy tale itself. Meanwhile, Disney CEO Bob Iger made a statement that seemed to directly contradict the company's approach to Snow White, saying, "Infusing messaging is not what we're up to, and that Disney needs to be entertaining." This apparent reversal left many wondering whether Iger was subtly distancing himself from the creative decisions that shaped the troubled production. The controversy highlights a fundamental question facing Hollywood today. How do you modernize beloved classics without alienating core audiences? Disney's live-action remake strategy had previously generated billions in revenue, with hits like The Lion King and Beauty and the Beast proving that nostalgia could be incredibly profitable. But Snow White represented a breaking point, a remake that strayed so far from its source material that it fractured the multi-generational bond Disney had carefully cultivated for decades. For Disney shareholders, the Snow White disaster raises alarming questions about the company's creative direction. Some investors fear this signals deeper issues in Disney's approach to its intellectual property. When a studio possesses the most valuable library of family entertainment in history, taking risks with those properties can have consequences far beyond a single film's performance. The emergency meeting between Zegler and Disney executives wasn't just about one actress or one movie. It represented a potential watershed moment in Hollywood, where the balance of power between studios and talent is constantly evolving. If Disney moves to penalize Zegler for statements that may have been approved by marketing teams, It could set a precedent that would make actors think twice before speaking candidly during promotional tours.
Disney's Bob Iger says their mission is to entertain, not send messaging as Snow White sales compete for worst performing live-action Disney adaptation ever.
Leaked emails and internal communications reveal just how chaotic the situation became as negative buzz escalated. Some documents detail executive concerns over the film's direction months before release, suggesting the controversies now erupting in public were foreseen but unaddressed. Others revealed an abrupt pivot by the marketing team when negativity spiked online, including instructions to downplay Zegler's interviews and promotional materials, even though her face and voice were already associated with comments about updating outdated tropes. What makes this situation particularly devastating for Disney is that Snow White isn't just any property. It's the cornerstone of the company's identity. The 1937 classic was Disney's first feature-length animated film and established the template for the magic that would define the studio for generations. Now, that same title has become synonymous with corporate discord and misplaced modernization efforts, a stunning reversal for a company built on fairy tale wonder. The fallout from this controversy extends beyond Disney and Zegler. Other studios are closely watching how this situation unfolds, knowing it could affect their own strategies for updating classic properties. Performers are reconsidering how they approach promotional interviews, wary of becoming scapegoats if films underperform. And fans who once trusted Disney to respect its legacy are questioning whether the studio still understands the timeless appeal of its own classics. For Rachel Zegler, once celebrated for her breakout role in West Side Story, this controversy threatens to overshadow her undeniable talent. Whether she was following Disney's direction or expressing her genuine feelings about the material, she now finds herself at the center of a corporate and cultural firestorm not entirely of her making. The emergency legal meeting represents a critical juncture for her career, one that could either lead to reconciliation or a protracted standoff that further damages both her reputation and Disney's. The Snow White controversy ultimately reveals the perilous tightrope walk studios face in our current cultural moment. Attempt to modernize too aggressively, and you risk alienating the very audiences who have supported your brand for generations. Stay too rigidly traditional, and you might appear out of touch with evolving societal values. Disney's failure to find that balance with Snow White has resulted in not just a box office disappointment, but a full-blown identity crisis for Hollywood's most iconic studio. As both sides prepare for whatever comes next, one thing is certain. The magic mirror on the wall would be hard-pressed to find much fairness in how this once promising project descended into chaos. The question now isn't just about who's the fairest of them all. It's about who will ultimately bear the blame for one of Disney's most costly missteps, and what that means for the future of Hollywood's most beloved stories. If you found this breakdown revealing, hit subscribe now for more uncensored Hollywood analysis that goes deeper than the headlines. The story of Snow White's failure isn't over, and what happens next could reshape the entertainment industry as we know it.